Good afternoon, Astros, Longhorn, and Aggie fans. This is Off Day with Jim Christopher. With you, or with me, and with you, as always, is our favorite Aggie, Andy Tom Cheston. Andy, we've decided that you're going to be making commentary with your title. Yordan was injured all along. It was, it was like The Godfather. We knew it was Bozzini the whole time.
That's where you got the reference, but yeah, it's I am sure that Yordan owns part of this, and I don't have any idea if he's actually been injured all season, but it sure would make a whole lot of things make a lot of sense about why balls he would normally crush are 20 feet in front of the fence, um, because he just can't grip the bat the way he needs to with his hand. That to me says a lot. And I refuse to give the Astros medical staff the benefit of the doubt on anything involving a player injury. So my assumption is he's been hurt since spring training, and they're just now getting around to trying to diagnose it. Not to give up the plot, but Yordan was placed on the IL or the DL, the IL. Which one are we doing? IL.
It's the IL.
The IL today, and we get to replace him with Cesar Salazar.
Yeah, there's a couple things about the replacement I want to talk about.
Noted power hitter.
Noted power hitter. And then not only did this get upgraded to him going to the IL, but now he's gone back to Houston, which to me signals, hamate surgery. Maybe. I mean, we don't know, but that's the point. Is the Astros medical staff has done nothing but give us room to do nothing but wildly speculate. And I can't even get mad at people for speculating anymore because we had a 3-month-long bone bruise last season.
Yeah, and somebody else was bone bruised just this season. It turned out to be Forrest Whitley. His bone bruise is actually a ligament strain, which ligaments aren't bones, so that's weird.
Let me just point out to our viewers out of the state. Not only that, but Houston is actually known to be like a world-class. This is where people come for medical stuff. The first heart transplant was done here. The first artificial heart was, but we don't know the difference between a bone bruise and a ligament sprain.
The first boob implant was done here.
Most importantly.
I mean, there's been leaps and bounds in medical science done right here in Harris County. And why the Astros can't seem to hire one competent doctor, it boggles the mind. And again, I think Yordan owns some part of this, because if he's truly been hurting for some period of time and didn't express that to somebody, because, there is this whole idea that players don't want to get taken out of the lineup. Yordan Alvarez isn't getting taken out of the lineup if he talks about, an injury. He's not losing his job to Cesar Salazar, although evidently that's what's happening now.
Totally, yes. And I will say this, because part of our job is to troll our own fan base a little bit. It's not the end of the season, because Kyle Tucker, who actually was hitting well when he got hurt, was out for even if he does have to have that hamate surgery. It's like a 6-week injury, right? Like we saw George Springer do it midseason and come back.
Yeah, potentially. It's not. I don't think there's anything that's necessarily season ending that could be wrong with his hand. But Alvarez does have a history of hand injuries. He has a history of knee injuries. You would think there would be a protocol kind of paying attention to that with a guy with history. But it is what it is, and we're going to go forward with, I guess, Yainer Diaz getting the bulk of the DH at bats, and Carantini moving up to catcher, which is the only reason you'd bring Salazar up, to have a backup catcher. So it's the team doesn't get better with this move.
Doesn't it make sense to just basically put Altuve in the DH spot, and then at least look at the bright side of now we can have a better defensive outfield?
Yeah, I mean, I'm of two minds with that. Altuve's been fine in left field. I can't think that he's really cost us any game, maybe one game that, a pivotal run scored because of something he did or didn't do.
Yeah.
But it would open up the opportunity for Altuve to DH and DeCenzo to get some at-bats, which he appears to be trying to earn.
Yeah.
And if you're committed to giving Cam Smith 5 starts a week and you're trying to get DeCenzo at-bats, they just kind of granted you this wish out of thin air. Unfortunately, it's because of an injury, but roll with it. get DeCenzo some more starts, get him some more at bats, and maximize what you can do offensively with the players that you have. It, it boggles the mind, and I realize that when you have a run of 7 consecutive years in an American League Championship Series and going to 4 World Series and all the things the Astros have done since 2015. um, we really have been, and I know Astros fans would agree with this, pretty lucky with injuries.
Sure.
Uh, Even what was it, 2018 or 2019, where everybody on the field was injured. I mean, all of our starters were injured at some point during the season. I think it was
Yeah.
2018. We still ended up making it to the ALCS that year. Uh, yeah, we've had some bad luck with Lance McCullers, with other starting pitchers, Christian Javier, Luis Garcia, Jose Urquidy. But by and large, we've avoided having big health issues with our starting players until the last couple of years. And I just, the Astros training staff, medical staff, whichever group is supporting these guys, has to have some accountability on this stuff.
They do, because it's easy to not worry, because like you're right, the only injuries that we tend to have in the beginning of this run and through the bulk of the run were freak injury type stuff. George Springer breaking his thumb, sliding into second, things like that
Yeah, Carlos Correa getting hit by his wife with a bat for
during a massage. Oh my God.
whatever.
I almost forgot about Massage Gate.
Yeah, whatever happened there happened. But
Whatever
yeah,
happened.
freak injuries.
But you know, like for as much as we don't want to label that, you can label Yordan Alvarez as injury prone, and so there should be, like to your point, some kind of protocol about him, because he's become, the Astros have, when clicking, as good a lineup as anybody. What we don't have anymore is depth, so you need to make sure that those starters are taken care of, particularly now when all these guys are getting older. I mean, Altuve's really never been injured in his career, really, and he's
I
getting
mean,
older.
he had a broken thumb. That wasn't really an injury that that is because of wear and tear. It's because somebody hit him with a pitch in a
Yeah,
World Baseball Classic game. Alvarez is injury prone, and the Astros know that he's injury prone because that's why he's not your starting left fielder. They made a conscious effort to keep him out of the field this year, which is part of why the move for Altuve was able to work. So they're aware, but they don't seem to do anything about it other than, well, we'll keep him from playing the field.
yeah,
It's clear that he's not been comfortable, and he goes through cold streaks like everybody else. But like I said, the balls that he would normally be putting into right field are ending up in the right fielder's glove way too often this season. And I've got to think that his hand has been hurting a lot more than just the past week.
yeah. I think you also probably could ask some of those same questions about Christian Walker, excuse me, with his injury coming out of spring training, particularly being like a torso injury. You just never know how long those things are going to take to
Yeah,
bounce back.
yeah, I get one of those every couple of months just from wiping my ass too vigorously. And that, I
So,
mean, he's
like,
not 53, but this is what, guys, this is what you have to look forward to if you're not aware.
I think I did that to I actually caused a month-long shoulder pain from sneezing too hard a
Yeah.
couple months ago. So look, I get it. One of the things I wanted to bring up, though, there's a lot of things to talk about. I'm not really too interested in talking about McCullers' start. I don't want to get too over or under my skis on it, but good friend of the show, and one of the few other media creators that I really do respect is Apollo Dez, of the whole Apollo thing. And he had a tweet not too long ago. I'll put it up, or I'll read it. I'm not going to put it all the way up, but basically saying that Dana Brown's going to have to work some of the 21 Braves magic with some free agent stuff. We remember the 21 Braves did is they went from nowhere to beating the World Series. So beatings in the World Series, he's got to, though, right? Like, this team cannot be seen as anything but a work in progress.
You've got a plethora of starting pitchers who are valuable out on the market. Even Fromber, with his less than impressive outing on Friday night, I guess, or was that Saturday? I
Friday.
forget which. I forget which. He's been up and down, but he still has a lot of value in the market, even being a free agent at the end of this year. Uh, it's going to be up to Dana to decide. I think you have a world where you can replace one or two of your starting pitchers that are currently in the rotation and reinforce this lineup. I don't think our bench is great. I don't think we've gotten production from any of the positions we need to get production from outside of Altuve, and he's now batting in the 260s. So he's in one of his little funks. Outside of Jake Myers, and let's be real honest about what Jake Myers is. Jake Myers is a 230 guy who had a couple of good weeks and then a 1 for 20 stretch and then one good day.
Yeah.
Uh, and great, he is a superb defensive outfielder. I'm not looking to replace him, but he's the guy playing above his skis. The rest of the team has just been
Well,
struggling. And
and
I think,
frankly, Andy, according to his track record, Jeremy Pena is also playing above his
uh,
skis.
uh,
And I
yep,
love him in the one hole. I think it's fantastic. He should stay there. But until he does it over a whole season, you have to figure that's going to end at some point.
yeah, and Pena's not on my list of worries. Altuve's not on my list of worries. Paredes honestly isn't on my list of worries. Myers isn't, but that's five guys out of 26. Starting pitcher's been fine. Hader's been fine. Abreu's been kind of shaky, frankly. I know his numbers probably say he's better than I think he is, but that's the bullpen
Well,
bias that I have.
but whenever you're down three games in a division, I know that we're not checking that, but you're directly responsible for losing two of them because of giving up leads
Yeah,
to the Seattle Mariners in one weekend. You can talk about it.
I think the way that I would phrase this now is that Brown is not going to panic. Crane is not going to stop spending money on the lineup, but there is opportunity for dramatic improvement through some personnel changes, and I wouldn't even begin to guess what those are at this point.
It gets laughed off by Astros media when people bring up trading Fromber. Oh, they're not going to trade Fromber. I'm not going to trade Fromber. And I don't know that I'm not sure of that. I think that if the Astros are being honest and Dana Brown's being honest, this year could go one of two ways, but there's a real opportunity next year to really reload. And I don't know that he's going to miss the opportunity to also reload the farm system, since that is kind of what his deal is developing guys in the farm system.
Well, I think that there's no more proof that you need by the fact that we're bringing up Cesar Salazar to replace Yordan Alvarez on a roster. And I know the position is the reason because you're going to move Geiner to DHing more and move Carantini to catch more. But the reality is there aren't offensive weapons that are ready to come to the major leagues. And this team is past due for having those kind of guys.
Yeah,
Um,
way past due.
and it's been a failure of development through now three GMs because the last guy who we developed and came up that's purely ours that has surpassed expectations is Kyle Tucker. That was a James Click and a Dana Brown ago.
Yeah, no, you're right. And look, there's a lot of pointing fingers of reasons why. Part of it is your farm system's depleted because you have gone to 7 straight LCSs with major changes at the trading deadline in all of those years. And I'm not going to want to trade that, but you have to be realistic about, okay, the AL is wide open. I don't know that the opportunity for a World Series is wide open, though, because I think there's 6 teams in the National League that can make an actual argument today, which frankly, I'm shocked that there's not one team that can just say, I've got the opportunity, but they do. But I think that if McCullers can continue to get better and you can see some of these guys coming back, and also guys like Bluebow, maybe even, and you can say, I can trade Framber Valdez to a National League team and get another bat or a couple of prospects. It seems like malfeasance to not make that opportunity happen.
Yeah, I mean, and the other part of this, and we've talked about it for a while, they're going to have a 40-man roster issue. McCullers is now active. There is this world where Christian Javier comes back this year. Spencer Arrighetti's going to come back. He's not on a 60-day DL, but he is on the IL. JP France could be coming back. You've got guys that you've got to make decisions on or expose them to waivers, and it'd be a whole lot better to be getting something back. And I think I realized it was three and a third innings of good baseball for McCullers against a really bad team that we lost to. Um, I'm not ready to say that he necessarily steps in and replaces Fromber, but the combination of him and Arrighetti could give you enough innings to replace Fromber.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's got me frustrated about Fromber is your ERA is over 4.5 maybe, and just give me a guy that can get me that can give me a bunch of Wisniewskis, and you can go win the division with Brown at the head of that, and then him. You can go win the
Well,
division with that.
as much as Fromber has struggled harnessing his emotions throughout his professional career, is it any surprise that in his free agent walk year that he's having trouble being
It's
consistent? I mean,
really not.
it's almost like you could have guessed what you were going to get, and you hope against hope it wasn't going to happen. But he doesn't respond really well to pressure. And the free agent year, as fun as it can be for some guys, Kyle Tucker's evidently having a blast in Chicago. Fromber just doesn't deal well with that type of pressure without being able to really, control his breathing and do it. And I don't know that change of scenery wouldn't be a really good thing for him.
Yeah. It's funny though, as we leave the Astros alone for the rest of this episode, but I will say this, one of the things that, we had talked about, did Hunter Brown become the ace and all this other stuff? He became the ace in my mind, Saturday when he gave up 3 runs off of some bullshit and still locked it in and gave the Astros plenty of time to chip away and come back. And so you get Hunter Brown leading a rotation with guys that are just above average. And I think, again, if that results in strengthening the lineup, you can go win a division with that.
Yeah, I don't want to discount Fromberg's contribution to this franchise, but the reality is Hunter Brown has passed him up. I am probably foolishly so, but high on Arrighetti coming back and picking up where he left off. And he's a guy that it's not quantifiable. So, Brian, if you're watching, please don't yell at me because there's not a number I have that supports it. But Hunter Brown, Spencer Arrighetti, even Hector Blanco, or Ronel Blanco, excuse me, they've got some dog in them. They things go bad and they kind of bear down a little bit.
Sure.
That's never been Fromber's game.
No.
And I tend to like guys that bear down and get serious when things go bad.
Yeah, and I think we talked about, Fromber had. I guess people should know that even before we started doing shows, we played the game Good Fromber, Bad Fromber. We've been playing this since 2018.
Yep.
And the reality is, I feel like he got it figured out for 2022 and it was a dog. And then the pitch clock came in and immediately threw so much of that asunder of what his pre-pitch routine was. Because remember, they did stories about it. It's a thing he's got to do. And now with 18 seconds to go, I don't know that he has time to really do it. And I think that might be a big part of some of his issue.
I mean, the plus side is he will eventually be in the Astros Hall of Fame someday because everybody gets in the Astros Hall of Fame.
And frankly, he should. Yes, he probably should have been the World Series MVP that year.
Yes, I would absolutely agree with that.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's speaking about a little bit of dog, and we'll talk about. I guess you would call a collie a mid-sized dog, right? But
they can get into the 40, 50 pound range.
Okay, so definitely, at least as far as Ron Swanson goes, still considered a dog.
Yeah, it's a dog. Yeah, Ron Swanson's hierarchy is it is a dog and not a cat.
It's a dog, not a cat,
and therefore not pointless.
But they've shown some fight, man, and they took the series from, at the time, the number 2 team in the country, LSU. Enough work has been done, yes, or as Milo used to say, is there still more wood to chop with 6 more SEC games to go?
I think you have to win 4 of them to be really comfortable. Missouri brings a really good opportunity to get 3 of them in a weekend because Missouri hasn't won a conference game yet. And I'm going to say that out loud, knowing
still haven't won a conference game. I thought they were winning on Sunday.
I don't believe that. I honestly haven't checked, but at least
as of Saturday, they sure have not. They are,
as of Saturday, they had not won a conference game.
They're 0-24.
And being an A&M fan for as long as I have, I fully know saying that out loud means Missouri's going to win at least 1 game this weekend.
Right.
But somewhere in these last 6 games, I think you have to win 4. And you have a really good argument. Last weekend notwithstanding, and I can say, having reflected for a week, what we saw in Austin were 2 teams that played really, really well against one another. Just A&M came up with the short end of the stick every time, but those were 3 one-run games that literally any team could have won. I don't think there was a point where A&M gave the game away. There weren't a bunch of errors or weirdness. Texas didn't dominate at any point. It was just 2 teams that played really solid baseball against each other. Texas came out on top. All props to them. But barring that weekend, we have taken 2 of 3 from what was number 1 Tennessee at their place. We took 2 of 3 from Arkansas. We took 2 of 3 this weekend from LSU. And so our RPI for baseball, which I know isn't the be all end all for the selection committee, but it is a factor, is like 35 or 34 now. So
Yeah.
I think we're safely in the field, provided we don't just step on our dicks these last 2 series.
Let's say you
And
step on your dick on the last 2 series, though. How much can wins in the SEC tournament help?
it's hard to say, because I am of the mind that the selection committee has their mind made up before those tournaments are played. And whether that's right or wrong, could a run all the way to the championship get you there? Yeah,
Sure.
probably. Sure, winning the championship gets you there without a doubt, but uh, I don't know that 2 wins early in the tournament make that big a deal in their eyes. And honestly, I think they mostly have their minds made up prior to any conference tournaments being played.
Yeah, I got to imagine you're probably right too, just because of how baseball works, large sample sizes and whatnot, which is why I think Texas stayed at number 1 in most of the polls, number 2 and one of them. Yeah, it's funny. I was reflecting on the Texas A&M series, Texas A&M series, and you're entirely right. The only game that could have been a blowout for Texas would have been a blowout for Texas if you had anybody else other than the last son of Krypton playing in right field. I still can't get over not even the game that guy had, but the inning that guy had, in which at one point he did go full on horizontal to stop a ball in the gap with two outs and 2 runners on, and then just what an incredible. I mean, that really was probably the game Texas could have blown out that they didn't, based purely on his effort.
But I think that's been part of our frustration all season. That talent hasn't been hidden for most of the year. Caden Sorrell made a couple of the plays you're talking about during those last few innings where they were catching everything that was all the lasers of the outfield. Sorrell was hurt for a good portion of the year, and when he came back, the team started winning again. I don't think there's a coincidence to that. I think most observers would tell you that while Jace Lavalette is the higher draft pick right now, because he's a year older than Sorrell, Sorrell's the better player, and Sorrell, you know, might have a better skill set. And I'm not taking Jace Lavalette lightly on that, because I think he's going to be a very successful major league player sooner rather than later. But Sorrell's better right now, and he's been the difference in what this team is, and that's been part of the frustration is the amount of losing that happened in the first half of the SEC schedule was just a bunch of boneheaded stuff that kept happening over and over and over again. Errors. Pitching was pretty decent actually, but just guys not hitting to their potential. And then all of a sudden you get no hit in Tennessee, and that woke the team up. And they've been on a pretty good run, even with a 3-game sweep against Texas since then. So you'd like to see, if you're a selection committee and considering whether or not they're a 2 seed, which I think most of the places are still projecting them as, you need to sweep Missouri. You need to win at least one of the games at Georgia, which is the new number 1 in at least one poll. I think they're number 2 in all the other ones. And I mean, your RPI is going to be in the low 30s, high 20s at that point if you do that. So it's a good setup. And frankly, if I'm a host team, I don't know that I want to face an A&M team as a number 2 or number 3 seed in my bracket, because that's a really tough draw for somebody.
Definitely. Now, before we get to the,
and also since it can't be a SEC team because they don't put conference teams in the same brackets, it'll be some poor West Coast team that gets beat the shit out of.
that's the thing too, is no matter what, your step down in competition is just going to be easier, for lack of a better term. Now, before we jump into the burn orange side of the show, I do want to do a shout out to 2 people on Twitter, John Patterson and Papa Kyle. Chatted with them yesterday. Both, one of them's a Longhorn, one of them's an Aggie. A lot of fun, kind of having a little bit of fun on social media.
Is Papa Kyle an Aggie?
Yes, I'm pretty sure.
Like 30% of us are named Kyle.
Yeah. Actually, no, he's the Longhorn in the group. I thought he would have been like named after Kyle Field or something. No, he's
there's another 5% of them that are named Field. That's just
right. But shout out to both of those guys. Thanks for listening. If you are, listen, man. This is obviously, I think, I'm not going to say this by saying like Longhorn baseball, for my predictions coming into this thing, have overachieved. And I'm not saying that as some way to be like, if things kind of fall apart, I'm going to be okay with that because they are where they are now. They are in the driver's seat of controlling all of their own destiny. Even after getting swept by Arkansas, they still have a 2-game lead in the SEC with 2 very winnable series with for the Longhorns coming up. But what did you see or notice or observe? I'll be honest, one game Arkansas flat out beat us up, but the other 2 games, I think 50% of the runs that scored got on base by a walk or a hit by pitch from us.
Yeah, and this is, people will disagree with me, but this is very slosh this late in the season. He is all about the NCAA tournament and positioning his team for the NCAA tournament. I think there's no world where you guys aren't a national seed. So that means you're hosting through the super regional. Should you win the regional, um, with a fairly easy path to Omaha, and because of that, he will start seeing what he has, putting guys in positions they wouldn't normally have put in, leaving a bullpen guy in a little bit longer to see if he's turned a corner on a Sunday game versus a Tuesday game. Um, it can be a little bit frustrating if you are all about the wins right now, which a lot of fans are, and God love them. But it is part of the ride with Slosh is that when you get what I would consider still, even after this weekend, a comfortable lead in the SEC to win the regular season. One of the dirty secrets is, other than the fan base, none of the teams actually care about winning the SEC tournament.
Yeah.
So you will, it's really just, let's not get hurt. And if things happen that way, great, but we really don't want to be that tired going into a regional 3 days later.
Is the regional 3 days after the tournament? I thought there was a whole week. But
It's
yeah,
pretty
you're
close.
right.
It's pretty close. It's like 3 or 4 days, depending on if you're Thursday or Friday. But yeah, that's part of his method, and it works for him. It can be frustrating when you watch a guy being left in a game when he clearly shouldn't be left in a game, which I think if I go scroll through my text from Saturday, I would hear that from you.
Yeah. I was uncharacteristically mad. Like, and you were doing family stuff, and I'm like, why aren't you paying attention to me? I was so mad. And I don't like getting that way over sports. Like, but this was my sports weekend. I watched 8 games with a real rooting interest, and only one of them won.
Yeah, that was my weekend last weekend. So
Yeah, I know.
I do understand.
Because I'm actually chatting with Scott McIntyre while we're both watching the Blues game into double overtime, and it's just, heart went out to him. So yeah, it was frustrating to see. And you did talk to me about the Schloss thing, and I remember Aggies saying the same thing about the conference tournament. Like, you really want to get through that thing healthy and not put yourself in a position to be behind the 8 ball when the regionals start.
Well, like whoever your Friday night starter is, for instance.
So is Jared, and that's the big thing I wanted to ask about. Jared Spencer was a stud, and he's out, and I wonder how much of that's starting to affect things as well.
Oh, I'm sure you've got finite amount of depth, so it certainly is going to affect a team. But whoever is going to be your Friday night starter, just be prepared for in the tournament for him not to start the first game of the tournament, because that's just pretty normal. And he'll only go 4 or 5 innings because it doesn't matter ultimately.
Sure.
Because it's all about having everybody lined up and healthy and having the right amount of work going into whoever you're hosting as the 4 seed on your regional several days later. It can be frustrating, especially if you really want to win the SEC tournament. But Florida's won the SEC tournament a number of times in the last few years, and they don't have anything to show for it. So,
right. You think the Longhorns still have the inside track though and winning the SEC regular season? Because I do care about that.
Yeah, it would. I think you would call it a collapse if they don't win it.
Yeah, and you know as well as I do, it's not about bragging rights for me. I just want to be able to buy more gear.
Understand, and having T-shirts is important, but you'd probably rather have an Omaha shirt than a Alabama shirt.
I would. Yeah, it's been the whole SEC thing has been an interesting experience, and we probably will, once all of this is over with and we're kind of in the dead of summer, we should do a all right, let me react to my first year, because so much about what you told me to be prepared for including the universal awfulness that is the umpiring crew, which
they're horrible.
It's even worse than the football refereeing, in my opinion.
Yeah. That was, and I paid attention more to the LSU A&M series this weekend for obvious reasons, but even the LSU fans who were benefiting from some of the calls could not understand what the guy at the home plate was looking at. And it is just, it's past time for the SEC, with as much money as they make, to hire and hold to standard a set of officials for all sports.
Like professionals.
Yes, it can't be, hey, I'm a high school coach, but I also ref your games if you're in my region, or I sell insurance 9 months out of the year, but I'm your head basketball official. It's just, it's mind-boggling how bad it is, and it comes, college baseball, unless something dramatic happens with the amount of money that's spent on it, is never going to have TrackMan or any of the other things that show. They very rarely even have anything when they're on ESPN with a strike zone superimposed on your screen.
Right.
And I think you've got a bunch of part-time umpires who rely way too much on the catcher's frame than they do on an actual strike zone.
Definitely that.
And that's amateur officiating, because the catcher's supposed to fool you as an umpire, and you're supposed to be smarter than that. And it's just horrible.
You also can't convince me that I watched a little bit of that Tennessee game, and it felt like at one point the umpire was calling balls and strikes out of spite because he was looking directly into like at some point, look, I buy into the hype. Obviously, the SEC is the best conference, at least in football and baseball right now. You're right. Both of our institutions are spending a lot of money to see sometimes these games decided by just random, like Max Scherzer yesterday was caught making a joke about one of our favorite umpires by flipping a coin before every pitch and deciding if it was a ball or a strike. But that's kind of what it feels like.
No, it's frustrating. When you are you're selling to a crowd, you're selling to ESPN, you're selling to audience at home. This is the best college baseball in the land. And you tune in and you're a casual fan watching and just seeing amateur, childish levels of pettiness and just ineptness amongst the officials. It would make me tune off. Honestly, I'd rather let me go watch Major League Baseball instead. And college baseball has such a incredible opportunity.
Yeah.
As Major League Baseball continues to thumb their nose at the average fan to fill in a gap. I mean, we both love minor league baseball, but I think it's no secret that Major League Baseball has ruined that product in a lot of ways. College baseball could very much fill that gap. It's inexpensive. It's fun. You play games before it gets really hot, so people come out and they have good time at the games. They're usually high scoring. There's a lot of things going for it. But if you have to sit and continually watch and think that the game's rigged because the umpires are just that bad, you're going to tune out. And it's irresponsible of the SEC at this point for what they put on the field as a product from an officiating standpoint. And I would say that's true in football and baseball.
Yeah. I was talking with another guy on Twitter the other day, an Aggie fan, about how much I loved Bluebell Park. And I think you're right. Like you can create the atmosphere minor league baseball creates, but having the difference of having it being competitive baseball where you actually carry wins. And that's why I think Texas needs a new ballpark. I think, but that's again, it can be a summer conversation, but for now, let's jump into our highlights. And Andy sent me his. I didn't even have to guess which one it would be.
Go get Sorrell. Sorrell to left. They're going back. Caden Sorrell has just given Texas A&M the lead. Caden Sorrell comes up and does it for the Aggies.
Jake Myers, who hit his first homer his last time up.
That ball in right center field, and there it is. His first hit of the year with 2 strikes. It's going to be a game-tying extra base hit. He's heading to third. The throw is offline. 2 RBI triple for Jake Myers. We're tied up.
The man is electric. It was right down the middle, and Myers absolutely smoked it. Didn't try and pull it also
which helped.
We got to get Pat with Bevo. He's right there, bro.
Bevo, holy hell. Here he is. He's right behind
there.
you. Hey, good-looking steers, Bevo. Those are good-looking steers. That's a big cow, Reese. That's a massive cow.
And the Silver Spurs, then they take care of him, responsible for everything.
I don't think Bevo's come to game day. Remember, see that guy?
Bevo's fired up. Bevo knows it's a big game. Bevo took that right steer and said, I'm playing games this morning. You're here for TCU? I'm going to right to the face. Bevo's ready to do the damn thing.
All right, before we get out of here, we've both been to the movies. I'm going to go first because I'm really curious as to hear about the movie you saw. Until Dawn, if you like splatter movies, it's a lot of fun. You're not going to walk out and go, okay, that movie was important. But I had an absolute blast. It was they put us, Andy, in like the 3-row Alamo Theater. So it was really small, but it was packed. Mm-hmm. So it was just like, there was a good energy to it. But you saw the surprisingly well-reviewed Thunderbolts movie. Is the hype worth it from someone like yourself who's an aficionado for these movies?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the bag for Marvel movies anyway, and as I've said on this show a number of times, I can watch a movie and find something I like about just about everything. But this was, I hate the Marvel's back because that's what you've been hearing for the past week. But I will say that Florence Pugh, David Harbour, and for you, John Walker's character, Russell's kid, I can't remember his first name right now. Wyatt Russell.
Yeah.
Really stole the movie. And really, Florence Pugh and David Harbour were the emotional center of the movie. It is charming in the way that Guardians of the Galaxy was. It's a bunch of characters you didn't know you would care about that you cared about. And a lot of that's due to the writing. A lot of that's due to the acting because even John Walker as a character redeems himself, which I know was one of your complaints about Falcon and Winter Soldier when it was on Disney Plus, was that they just made him into kind of a clown show and didn't really deal with the PTSD's part of it and the ramifications of that. Not all of that is answered, but he really redeems himself. He's more of a jerk than he was like he is in the comics, so it's a little bit more true to the character.
Sure.
But there's some soul behind it. It's not just performative. So that part's good. But it's Florence Pugh's movie. Florence Pugh, I would watch pretty much do anything, but it was a sound plot. It was stakes that made sense. Not that it's any secret, but they killed a character in the first 15 minutes of the film that's probably never going to come back, and most fans will say thank you. It led to other things that are going to happen in the immediate future, so it felt back to some of the Marvel films that have felt disconnected in the last couple of years, back to that phase 1 through 3 where you're building on something, and they're clearly building towards Secret Wars and Doomsday. Reverse that. But it even builds to the Fantastic Four that comes out in July. So I'd see it. I'd see it on the big screen because I think it's a little bit cinematic. So that's good. Okay. If you can catch it in IMAX, I'm always going to recommend that because why wouldn't you go see it in IMAX?
All right. My last question: Have you watched the finale of Gemstones?
I have not because I was in Denton moving my daughter out of college this weekend. So that's tonight plan.
Yeah, we'll put a pin in that until next week because I have some thoughts. Andy, I guess A&M has so Texas has Florida this week. It's a better Florida than they were at the beginning of the season. So, but it is at home. And then I'm sorry, but we own the Dirt Burglars afterwards. So I expect the Longhorns to be 4-2 over the final 6. You pointed out that you have Missouri and then Georgia. I would expect if I were you at least a similar 4-2 kind of result at a minimum.
We need to go 4-2. I think.
All right. Well, we're more than 4-2. We're hitting 1,000. Tonight, the Astros do take on the Brewers. I don't know why some of Astros Twitter thought this would be a walk in the park because they're the same team we are. And so I don't know which Astros team shows up. Is it the one that loses to the White Sox or the one that beats the Tigers and the Padres? Who knows?
Yeah, it's a really interesting narrative that happened before the weekend about how this should be the start of a 9-game win streak because you've got the White Sox, Brewers, and Reds coming up. I don't think we've won a series against the Reds in a decade. I think
Not since we were in the division. It feels like.
I mean, literally, that's not a, and we've played them not every year because of COVID and some other scheduling weirdness, but they've beat us pretty handily every time we played them. The Brewers, usually play pretty even. I know they've got basically the same record as we do. They have the same inconsistencies that we do. And to your point, I think our pitching usually shows up. Who knows whether or not our offense is going to show up? You'd like to think that guys are going to step up a little bit in Yordan's absence, but they didn't on Sunday. So,
Yeah, well, guess we'll see. And one of the things I'll be in Houston for the Red Series, and Ella Dela Cruz is one of my favorite non-Astros. He's exciting to watch, and it'll be kind of cool to see him in action. He usually plays well against us.
I mean, if the Reds want to really shake things up in that division, we could give them Fromber and find room for De La Cruz.
I bet we can find room. But we always have room for? We always have room for you, Andy. We will be back next week. Until next week, this has been Off Day with Ballpark Nation.